What if I told you that that $6 specialty iced coffee you bought this morning,
Yeah.
it's secretly costing your future self something like $400?
Wow.
Right. Or like that new pair of sneakers you just swiped your debit card for, it isn't actually $120.
It's literally thousands of dollars of invisible wealth you just gave away.
Exactly. Thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like a massive exaggeration or, I don't know, maybe some extreme financial guilt trip.
Oh, for sure. It feels preachy.
Yeah. But today, we're really going to look at the brutal, undeniable physics of money.
And it really is entirely about the physics. I mean, we live in a world where the human brain is just completely mismatched for the financial reality we are operating in right now.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We're unpacking a massive stack of sources today, behavioral science journals, data from the Federal Reserve, the Social Security Administration, and white papers on youth investing.
A lot of heavy data, but it translates to real life so perfectly.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because we are zeroing in on this massive generational divide. Like if you are a teenager or a young adult listening right now, you are navigating an economy that feels incredibly hostile.
Hostile is the exact right word.
You look at the news and you hear about skyrocketing housing costs, inflation that just, well, it won't quit. And the traditional path to the middle class just feels like it's crumbling right in front of you.
The stakes have truly never been higher. When we talk about understanding money today, it is no longer just about, accumulating wealth to buy a yacht or a luxury car.
Right. It's not about being a billionaire.
No, not at all. It is about buying your own freedom. It's about lowering your baseline stress level so you don't wake up at 2 a.m. panicking about rent.
Which so many people do.
Absolutely. It's about giving yourself optionality in your career so you can walk away from a toxic boss. And most importantly, what's fascinating here is it's about avoiding this crushing negative net worth trap that is currently swallowing so many people in their 20s and 30s.
So we're talking directly to you. Whether you are 16 and just got your very first summer job, or you're 24 and trying to figure out how to dig out of student loans, we want to map out the exact mechanisms of how wealth is actually built.
The literal nuts and bolts.
Right. And I want to start with a scenario from our research that just completely broke my brain.
Let's hear it.
Okay. Imagine two people. We'll call them the early bird and the late bloomer. So the early bird is 16 years old, and they decide to start putting away just $200 a month.
Okay, $200 a month.
Yeah. They invest it in a standard broad market index fund. They do this every single month. Now, the late bloomer decides they want to, enjoy their youth.
Live in the moment.
Exactly. Spend all their disposable income, and they wait until they're 26 to do the exact same thing.
A 10-year delay.
Yep. $200 a month, same exact investment, same exact historical rate of return. Fast forward to when they both hit age 65. You would assume the late bloomer is just, 10 years behind, right?
Right, because the human brain instinctively thinks in linear terms. We assume a 10-year delay just means 10 years less of savings.
But the math says otherwise. By the time they retire, the 16-year-old early bird has over $1.3 million.
Over $1 million.
Yeah, 1.3. And the late bloomer, who started at 26, they have about $598,000.
That is wild.
A mere 10-year delay costs that second person a staggering $729,000.
Nearly $750,000.
How? How does a 10-year head start generate $750,000 out of thin air? I really need to understand the underlying mechanism here.
It boils down to a phenomenon called the temporal multiplier.
The temporal multiplier.
Exactly. This is the extreme end of compound interest. Let's really break down how this actually functions beneath the surface, because it's not intuitive.
No, it's not.
When you put money in a standard bank account, the bank pays you simple interest. It's a tiny fraction of a percent just for keeping your cash there.
Basically pennies.
Right, pennies. But compound interest is fundamentally different. It is when you earn interest on your original money, and then you earn interest on the interest you just made. Over time, it creates this massive exponential snowball effect.
Okay, but I want to get specific about where this money is going, because we aren't talking about a high-yield savings account here, right?
Yeah.
The sources keep referencing the S&P 500.
Yes, the S&P 500.
For anyone who hears that term thrown around on the news but doesn't actually know what it is, what are we practically investing in?
So the S&P 500 is an index. Think of it as a basket.
Definitely a basket.
And this basket contains tiny slices of the 500 largest, most successful publicly traded companies in the United States.
Well, like the heavy hitters.
Exactly. You are buying microscopic ownership in companies that make the phone in your pocket, the streaming service you watch every night, the software your school uses.
Wow, okay.
When those companies generate profits and grow, the value of your tiny slice goes up too. The historical average return of this index over the last century is roughly 10% a year.
10%. And there's an extra layer to that, right? Dividends.
Yes, dividends are huge.
Because our sources note that if you reinvest dividends, that return historically jumps to around 11.3%. So what exactly is a dividend in this context?
A dividend is simply a cash payout. Some of those 500 companies are so massive and they have so much profit at the end of the quarter that they distribute a portion of it directly back to their shareholders.
Just hand out cash.
Literally just deposit cash into your brokerage account. And when you receive that cash, you have a choice. You can spend it, or you can automatically use it to buy more slices of the S&P 500.
I see.
Reinvesting those dividends acts as an accelerant. It completely supercharges the compound interest formula.
Let's try to visualize that exponential growth, because if I'm just looking at the math, linear growth is adding $200 every month. My brain easily understands 2 plus 2 plus 2.
Of course, that's how we're taught to count. But exponential growth is multiplicative. In the actual algebraic formula for compound interest, the variable for time is the exponent.
The exponent.
Yeah.
Not just a multiplier.
Right. It is the exponent. Time is literally doing the heavy lifting. That is why time in the market will always, always beat the sheer amount of money you invest. Our research refers to this as first decade dominance.
First decade dominance. I like that term.
It basically means the dollars you contribute between the ages of 16 and 26 are mathematically infinitely more valuable than the dollars you contribute between 46 and 56.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want to put a magnifying glass on that first decade.
Yeah.
Walk me through what is physically happening to the early bird when they turn 26. They've been investing for 10 years.
Okay, at age 26, the early bird has been putting in $200 a month. Over 10 years, out of their own pocket, from mowing lawns, bagging groceries, working retail, they have contributed $24,000.
Okay, 24 grand is their own sweat.
Exactly. But because of compound interest, assuming a moderate 8% return just to be conservative here, their account balance isn't $24,000. It is actually around $41,660.
Wow.
And here is the mechanical tipping point. At age 26, that $41,660 is generating about $3,300 a year in compound growth alone.
Wait, I really want to make sure I'm hearing this right. The account itself is generating $3,300?
Yep.
But the person is only putting in $200 a month, which is $2,400 a year. So the account is generating more money by itself than the person is physically putting in from their job.
Yes. The money has literally become a secondary employee.
That is mind-blowing.
You have essentially hired an invisible worker who is clocked in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't take vacations, they don't get sick, and their salary is compounding.
Wow.
Meanwhile, our late bloomer is just waking up at age 26. They decide to finally start. They put in their $2,400 that year, but the early bird's account is growing by $5,700 that year.
Wait, the $2,400 they contributed plus the $3,300 the invisible employee generated?
Exactly. The late bloomer is already getting lapped, and they haven't even tied their shoes.
Let me push back on this, though, because I know exactly how a 20-something thinks. If I'm 26, or let's say I'm 36, and I realize I'm way behind, I usually tell myself, well, it's fine. I just got a promotion. I'm making real money now. I can just muscle my way past the 16-year-old by throwing huge chunks of my salary at the market.
Right, the brute force method.
Yeah. Can't a high-income earner just out-invest a delayed start?
That is the most persistent myth in personal finance. We assume high income equals high wealth, but the math is incredibly unforgiving here.
How unforgiving.
The sources provide a direct comparison for this. Let's say a 16-year-old decides to invest just $50 a month. We're talking about the cost of, like, a couple of fast food meals.
Super doable.
They do that consistently until age 65.
Mm-hmm.
Over their entire lifetime, they contribute a total of $29,400 of their own money. With historical returns, they retire with over $668,000.
Just from $50 a month.
Now, take a 36-year-old who suddenly realizes they have absolutely nothing saved for retirement. To reach that exact same $668,000 by age 65, the 36-year-old has to invest $350 a month.
Whoa, that is 7 times the monthly burden.
7 times. And look at the total out-of-pocket costs. The 36-year-old has to sacrifice a total of $121,800 of their own hard-earned money just to tie the teenager who only put in $29,400.
That is a brutal reality check.
You cannot easily out-earn a delayed start because you are fighting the laws of mathematics. There's a mental model in our research called the Rule of 72 that explains exactly why this gap is so impossible to close.
I love mental math tricks. How does the Rule of 72 work?
It is a shortcut to see how fast your money grows. You just take the number 72 and divide it by the interest rate you're earning. The result tells you roughly how many years it takes for your investment to completely double.
Okay, so if you are earning a 10% historical return in the S&P 500,
You divide 72 by 10, your money doubles every 7.2 years.
which means the 16-year-old simply gets more doubling cycles over their lifetime.
Exactly. A 16-year-old gets roughly 7 full doubles before they hit traditional retirement age. A 26-year-old gets about 5.4 doubles.
Okay, I see.
And because we are dealing with an exponential curve, those very last doubles at the end of the timeline are where the absolute millions live.
Because doubling a big number gets you a massive number.
Right. Going from 10,000 to 20,000 is one double. But going from 500,000 to 1 million is also just one single double.
Oh, wow.
Going from 1 million to 2 million is the final double. By waiting until you are 26, you are essentially chopping off the biggest, most massive doubles at the very end of your life.
If the math is this definitive, and the advantage of starting as a teenager is this colossal, it begs a massive question. Why isn't every single high schooler in America throwing $50 a month into an index fund?
Right. It seems so obvious.
It clearly isn't an information deficit. The modern teenager is bombarded with financial content constantly on their phones.
They are practically drowning in it. The data shows that nearly half of all teens, around 48%, report learning about investing primarily from social media.
Wow, almost half.
The hashtag FinTalk, which is the umbrella for the financial community on TikTok, has generated over 4.7 billion views.
Billion with a B.
Yes. The sheer scale of influence these platforms have over young financial minds is completely unprecedented.
I mean, I spend time on those platforms.
Sure.
It is a chaotic environment. You've got guys standing in front of rented sports cars, screaming about cryptocurrency options trading and meme stocks.
It's a circus.
It really is. It does
Yeah.
not look like a place where you learn about long-term compound interest.
And the quality of the advice is deeply alarming. A comprehensive study by the CFA Institute analyzed these platforms and found that only 1 in 10 finfluencers are transparent about their actual qualifications.
1 in 10.
You have millions of teenagers taking literal investment advice from individuals whose sole expertise is manipulating the social media algorithm for engagement rather than actual fiduciary wealth management.
Real quick, define fiduciary for someone who might not know. Why is that word so important in this space?
A fiduciary is a professional who is legally and ethically bound to put your financial interests above their own.
Yeah, okay.
If they give you advice that ruins you financially but makes them a massive commission, they face severe legal consequences. They could lose their license.
But the TikTok influencer,
A TikTok influencer telling you to buy a highly volatile crypto coin has zero legal responsibility to you. If you lose your entire life savings, they just post another video the next day.
so why are teens listening to them? Why are they drawn to the guy promising 500% returns on a dog-themed crypto coin instead of the boring index fund?
It stems from a psychological state researchers are calling financial nihilism.
Financial nihilism. That sounds bleak.
It is bleak. We have to look at the macroeconomic environment young people are inheriting right now. They look at the housing market and see starter homes priced at $800,000.
Which is insane.
They see inflation eating their grocery budget every week. They see entry-level jobs requiring 3 years of experience and a college degree that will put them $100,000 in debt.
Yeah, there is a pervasive, heavy feeling of despair.
Exactly. The internal logic becomes, well, the system is rigged. I will never be able to afford a normal middle-class life by saving $50 a month. The traditional path is dead, so why even play by those rules?
That makes total sense, actually. If you feel like the game is impossible to win by walking, you start looking for a lottery ticket. You start taking massive, reckless leaps.
And the influencers and trading apps prey on that exact desperation. They offer the illusion of a shortcut, but it is more insidious than just bad advice.
How so?
The platforms themselves, the digital brokerage apps on your phone, are heavily gamified to manipulate human behavior.
What is the actual mechanism making these apps so addictive?
It is rooted in neurobiology. These apps use bright, seductive visuals, constant push notifications, and variable reward schedules. When you make a trade, digital confetti explodes on your screen.
Like a video game.
Literally. Your brain is flooded with dopamine, the exact same neurotransmitter response triggered by pulling the lever on a slot machine. The apps are designed to encourage active, constant trading. They want you buying and selling every single day.
But that's not how you build wealth.
No, there is overwhelming historical and statistical evidence proving that active day traders consistently and aggressively underperform passive long-term investors.
Yeah.
And you also run into pump and dump schemes.
Right, where the influencer buys a worthless asset, hypes it up to their millions of followers, the followers buy in, the price spikes.
And the influencer secretly sells everything at the top.
Leaving the teenagers holding the bag when the price inevitably crashes to zero.
Exactly. It's devastating.
So if you have this massive demographic of young people day trading on their phones, chasing dopamine hits, and losing their shirts, what is the long-term fallout? Do they just get permanently wiped out and swear off investing forever?
The research actually offers a really fascinating extrapolation here. For many of these young day traders, an early financial blow-up like losing a few $1,000s on a meme stock when they are 19 acts as a highly effective, albeit extremely painful, tuition fee.
Tuition fee, so they learn from it.
If they survive the blow-up financially, meaning they didn't take on massive credit card debt to fund their trading, the sting of that loss rewires their approach.
Okay, so it humbles them.
Historically, investors who get burned by speculation develop a deep skepticism. They eventually revert to the traditional, boring methods of wealth building. They realize that a broad market ETF might not make for an exciting viral video, but it is mathematically sound.
This brings up a really important counter-narrative.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Gen Z gets painted with this really broad brush, that they are all just reckless crypto gamblers with zero attention span. Is the data actually supporting that stereotype?
No, the data strongly refutes it. While the YOLO day traders grab all the algorithm's attention and the media headlines, the silent majority of Gen Z is actually highly pragmatic. Yes. According to Pew Research, Gen Z and younger millennials are opening traditional investment accounts at significantly earlier ages than Gen X or boomers did. Furthermore, brokerage data shows a massive preference among Gen Z for low-cost ETFs and passive index funds over individual stock picking.
We mentioned ETFs earlier, just to make sure we leave no one behind. What is an ETF compared to, like, a mutual fund or a stock?
ETF stands for Exchange Traded Fund. It is very similar to an index fund. If buying an individual stock is like betting all your grocery money on a single box of cereal, an ETF is like buying a massive variety pack that contains a crumb of every cereal in the store.
Okay, I love that analogy.
If one cereal company goes bankrupt, you don't really notice because you own hundreds of others. ETFs trade on the stock market throughout the day, and they usually have extremely low fees.
Got it.
The fact that Gen Z is flocking to them shows that they are a deeply skeptical generation. They question management fees, they demand transparency, and they are practically engaging with the financial system even if they inherently distrust it.
That is incredibly optimistic. It shows the instinct is there. But here is the problem. Even if you dodge the finfluencer scams, and even if you perfectly understand the math of the S&P 500 and the temporal multiplier, you still have a monumental enemy to fight every single day.
Yes, you do.
And that enemy lives inside your own skull.
The psychological hurdle to building wealth is infinitely higher than the mathematical one. This brings us to a foundational concept in behavioral economics, and it explains almost every bad financial decision humans make. It is called hyperbolic discounting.
Or present bias.
Right. Commonly referred to as present bias, yes.
Let's dissect the neurobiology of this. Why is my brain actively fighting against my future wealth?
To understand present bias, you have to look at how our brains evolved. For hundreds of thousands of years, human survival depended on immediate caloric intake and avoiding immediate danger.
Like running from a tiger.
Exactly. We are hardwired by evolution to heavily prioritize the present moment. So when you sit a 16-year-old down and ask them to give up $200 today, money they could use for a concert, new clothes, or a road trip so that they can have $1 million when they are 65, their primal brain aggressively rebels.
Because it doesn't compute.
It perceives a future reward as almost entirely abstract and meaningless compared to a present reward.
I read about the fMRI studies on this in the source material, and it is genuinely unsettling. When people are put in brain scanners and asked to think about themselves in the future, The brain activity shifts.
It shifts dramatically. When you think about your current self, a specific region called the medial prefrontal cortex lights up.
Okay.
But when researchers ask subjects to think about their future self decades down the road, that area of the brain goes completely dark.
Wait, really?
Yes. The neural activation looks identical to when the subject is asked to think about a literal stranger on the street.
So when I am agonizing over whether to invest money for retirement, my brain doesn't actually see future me as me. It sees future me as some random old person that I am being forced to hand my hard-earned money to.
Exactly.
No wonder it feels like a sacrifice.
You are asking a teenager to sacrifice today's dopamine for the security of a stranger they haven't met yet. There is a classic scenario used in economic research regarding lottery winners that perfectly illustrates this.
Oh, the lottery study. Walk us through that.
Imagine you win the lottery, and the officials give you two options. Option A, you take a lump sum of $5 million right now. Option B, you receive an annuity of $250,000 a year for the rest of your life.
Okay, what's the optimal choice?
If you are a 30-year-old in good health, the math dictates that the $250,000 a year will generate vastly more wealth over your lifetime. It isn't even close. Yet the overwhelming majority of people take the lump sum today.
Because they want it now.
We heavily dramatically discount the value of future payouts.
I see this playing out constantly in everyday life. We call it the weight tax or the time tax. Going back to the iced coffee example from the start of the show.
Right, the coffee.
Spending $6 on a coffee today feels fantastic. The caffeine hits your bloodstream. The sugar tastes great. It is immediate sensory feedback. If you take that same $6 and invest it, it might become hundreds of dollars by retirement. But retirement is 50 years away, and the coffee's in your hand right now.
And this creates what behavioral scientists call the plateau of latent potential, which is often experienced as the valley of disappointment.
The valley of disappointment.
This is the most dangerous phase for a young investor, and it is crucial we explain how this feels. When you first start investing for the first 3, 4, or 5 years, the growth is incredibly agonizingly slow.
Because you don't have much money in there yet.
Right, because your principal balance, the actual cash you put in, is small, the compound interest is tiny.
So a 19-year-old might save diligently, skipping going out with friends, bagging their lunch, and after 2 years they look at their brokerage app and see their account has only grown by like couple $100.
Exactly. They look at the app and the present bias kicks in. The brain says, this isn't working. You sacrificed all that fun for $200. This is a scam.
They are deep in the valley of disappointment.
They cannot see that they are simply laying the foundational track for the exponential curve that will violently take off a decade later. So they quit before the invisible employee even finishes training.
So what does this all mean? If our brains are this terrible at prioritizing the future, and we are literally fighting our own neurobiology, how do we win? It feels like setting an alarm to go for a run at 5 a.m.
Oh, the 5 a.m. alarm.
Yeah, the night before you is highly ambitious, setting out the workout clothes, totally motivated. But the 5 a.m. you is a completely different entity whose only goal in life is to hit the snooze button. How do we beat 5 a.m. you when it comes to money?
You cannot rely on willpower. Willpower is a finite resource, and it suffers from ego depletion.
Ego depletion.
It means the more decisions you make, the weaker your willpower gets. If you have to make a manual conscious choice every single month to log into your bank and transfer $200 to an investment account 5 a.m., you will eventually find a rationalization to skip a month.
Oh, my car needs tires. Or I really need a vacation.
Exactly. The only reliable way to beat present bias is through absolute automation.
Removing the human element entirely.
You set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to your brokerage account that executes the exact day your paycheck hits. The money is swept away before you ever feel it, before you ever see it in your available balance.
Out of sight, out of mind.
You learn to live on the remainder. You are literally bypassing the brain's opportunity to discount the future because the decision has already been made.
Automating the good habits is huge. But present bias doesn't just mess with how we buy coffee or index funds. If our brains are so terrible at visualizing the future, it makes total sense why we make such catastrophic long-term mistakes when we are 17 or 18 years old and being asked to make massive life choices.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to talk about the education and debt crossroad next, because the traditional narrative we are fed from kindergarten is completely binary.
Yeah.
Go to a 4-year university, take on whatever student loans are necessary, because a bachelor's degree is the guaranteed, undeniable ticket to the middle class.
Well, for decades, that was statistically true. The college wage premium was undeniable. But the landscape of the 2026 economy is telling a radically different story, and we really have to look at the math of that debt.
The sources have a statistic that genuinely made me do a double take.
Which one?
It states that top-tier trade certifications can result in a $448,000 to $600,000 financial advantage in the first 10 years of a career compared to a traditional bachelor's degree.
It's a staggering number.
I need you to walk me through how an electrician or an avionics tech is beating a college grad by $500,000 in a single decade.
It comes down to two immense forces colliding here: the avoidance of the debt trap and gaining a massive multi-year head start in the workforce.
Okay, let's break that down.
Let's examine the upfront costs first. The average high-level trade program or vocational certification currently costs between $15,000 and $20,000 total.
Total.
Yes. Conversely, a student attending a four-year university is frequently graduating with upwards of $100,000 in student loan debt when you factor in tuition, housing, and compounding interest during school.
Right.
The university student is stepping up to the starting line of adulthood $100,000 in the red.
That is the negative net worth phase. They are starting life from a deep subterranean crater.
Exactly. Now overlay the time factor. A comprehensive trade program might take 12 to 18 months. So at age 19, the trade worker enters the labor market full-time.
They're already working.
Let's assume they are making a conservative $60,000 a year to start. Over the next 3 years, while their high school peer is still sitting in college lectures, not earning a full-time salary, and actively racking up more debt, the trade worker has already grossed $180,000.
So when the college grad finally steps out into the sunlight at age 22, holding their diploma and a bill for $100,000, the trade worker has been earning money for 3 years.
Yes.
And, more importantly, tying this back to our first segment, the trade worker could have been investing for 3 years.
Precisely the point. Because the trade worker is earning an adult income at 19, they can immediately start maxing out their retirement accounts. They are capturing the most mathematically valuable years of the temporal multiplier.
Need those early doubles.
Exactly. Furthermore, we need to completely update our mental image of what the trades are. We are not talking about the purely manual labor jobs of the 1980s. The modern trades are highly complex technical fields.
Right. The sources highlight the highest paying certifications right now.
Right.
Aerospace avionics, precision manufacturing, smart HVAC telemetry. What do those jobs actually look like on the ground today?
These professionals are often showing up to a job site with a laptop, not just a wrench. They are diagnosing highly sophisticated sensor networks, managing digital project telemetry, and working directly with robotics.
Very tech-heavy.
The skill ceiling is incredibly high, which is why the compensation has skyrocketed, and the apprenticeship model has completely flipped the educational script.
How so?
Instead of paying a university hundreds of dollars a credit hour for the privilege of learning, trade apprentices are hired by a company and paid an hourly wage to learn the skill on the job.
Wait, hold on. I have to push back here.
Go for it.
Because my high school guidance counselor has been telling me for 4 years that if I don't get a bachelor's degree, my earning potential will hit a brick wall. Are you telling me an HVAC tech is going to out-earn a software engineer or a corporate manager over a 40-year career? Doesn't the college degree eventually pull ahead?
If we look purely at peak annual salary, statistically, yes. The university graduate will often catch up and surpass the trade worker's annual income when they reach their late 30s or 40s.
Okay, so the counselor wasn't totally lying.
The bachelor's degree does raise the ultimate salary ceiling in many corporate fields. However, total accumulated wealth is not determined solely by your peak salary. It is determined by how much capital you deploy into the market and how long that capital has been compounding.
Because the college grads spent their entire 20s just trying to climb out of the crater.
Exactly. The college graduate spends the first decade of their career funneling a massive portion of their disposable income toward paying off the principal and the interest of their student loans. They cannot invest heavily because they are servicing debt.
While the trade worker is cruising.
Right. By the time the college grad hits zero net worth and is finally ready to start aggressively investing at age 30 or 32, the trade worker's portfolio has already been compounding for a decade. The trade worker's portfolio has hit the exponential curve. Even with a higher salary in their 40s, it becomes mathematically agonizing for the college grad to overtake the trade worker's total net worth.
It all comes back to time. The math just relentlessly favors the early starter. But this brings up a very real anxiety.
What's that?
So we're talking about avoiding this massive 100K crater at age 18. But I know for a fact a huge chunk of our listeners are in their 20s, and they are listening to us thinking, cool, I already fell in the crater. I went to the university, I got the degree, and I have the debt.
Right. They are already in the thick of it.
What do? Do they aggressively pay off the loans, or do they invest?
It is the most common paralyzing dilemma in personal finance. Young adults feel like they are being torn in two directions, but the math provides a remarkably clear framework for making this decision. It is called the 6% rule.
The 6% rule. Okay.
We have to compare the cost of the debt against the potential return of the market. If the interest rate on your debt is over 6 or 7%, which usually applies to credit card debt, personal loans, or high-interest private student loans, you must attack that debt with everything you have. Pay it off aggressively.
Why is 6% the magic threshold?
Because when you pay off a loan that charges 7% interest, you are effectively locking in a guaranteed 7% return on your money.
Oh, because you aren't losing that 7% anymore.
Exactly. It is an immediate, risk-free yield. It is very difficult to find an investment in the stock market that guarantees a 7% return with absolutely zero risk. So high-interest debt gets absolute priority.
Okay, but what if the listener has a standard federal student loan? A lot of those were locked in at like 4 or 5%.
If the interest rate is under that 6% threshold, the mathematical consensus flips. The most optimal wealth-building strategy is to make the bare minimum payments required on that low-interest debt and funnel all your extra disposable income into the stock market. Yes. Because the S&P 500 historically returns around 10%, you are engaging in a form of positive arbitrage. Your loan costs you 4%, but your invested money is earning 10%. You are netting a 6% positive spread.
But you know, human beings don't think like spreadsheets.
No, we don't.
When I look at my bank accounts, I compartmentalize. I have my debt mental bucket and my savings mental bucket.
And behavioral economists have a name for that. It is a cognitive bias called mental accounting. We artificially separate our money into these psychological buckets based on where it came from or what we intend to use it for.
Yes, exactly.
People feel this immense pressure to completely empty the debt bucket before they feel they are allowed to put a single dollar into the investment bucket. But to the universe, a dollar is a dollar.
Right.
Mathematically, choosing to throw an extra $1,000 at a 4% student loan instead of investing it in an index fund at 10% means you are actively choosing to lose a 6% net return.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. What if someone says, listen, I hear the math, but I despise this debt. It feels like a chain around my neck. Why shouldn't I just put my retirement on pause for 2 or 3 years, live on rice and beans, work 3 jobs, completely annihilate the student loan, and then take all that freed up cash and invest heavily?
Because you sacrifice assets you can never, ever reclaim.
Like what?
First, you lose the time. As we discussed earlier, those 2 or 3 years of compound growth at the very beginning of your timeline are the most explosive, valuable years you possess. You can't rewind the clock.
Right.
Second, you permanently forfeit your annual tax advantage contribution limits. The IRS only lets you put a certain amount into a Roth IRA each year. If you skip investing in 2026 to pay down debt, you can never go back in 2028 and claim that missed 2026 tax-free space. It vaporizes.
Is there a middle ground? A way to scratch the psychological itch of paying down debt without completely abandoning the math?
Yes. The sources outline option 3, the hybrid approach. If you have low-interest debt but you simply cannot stomach doing the bare minimum, you compromise. But the absolute golden rule of the hybrid approach is that you must secure your employer's 401k match before you put a single extra cent toward the debt.
Explain the mechanics of a 401k match for someone entering the corporate world for the first time.
A 401k is a retirement account sponsored by your employer. Many companies offer a matching program as part of your benefits package. For example, they might say, if you contribute 5% of your salary to this account, we will also put in 5% of your salary.
So they match it dollar for dollar.
It is quite literally free money. It is a 100% guaranteed return on your investment the moment it hits the account. If you make $60,000 and put in $3,000, they hand you another $3,000.
Wow.
Turning down an employer match to pay off a 4% student loan is mathematically disastrous. You get the match first, always, and then you use whatever is left over to chip away at the debt.
But we have to give space for the psychological reality here. Present bias makes us crave the immediate visceral relief of logging into a portal and seeing a loan balance hit $0.
It's a huge dopamine hit.
Investing for a retirement that is 40 years away feels abstract and ghostly. Paying off a loan feels real. For some people, the psychological piece of not owing anybody money just trumps the math.
Absolutely. We have to respect that personal finance is deeply, intrinsically personal. If holding a 4% student loan is causing you severe physiological anxiety, triggering panic attacks, and keeping you awake at night, the mathematical optimization does not matter. The psychological toll of financial stress is profoundly damaging.
Which actually transitions us seamlessly into the next massive piece of this puzzle. Why do people struggle to grasp these concepts in the first place? Why is it so hard to internalize the 6% rule or compound interest?
Yep.
It isn't just about reading a textbook. It is about the psychosocial factors of financial literacy.
The statistics on this are sobering. Currently, Gen Z holds the lowest financial literacy rate of any measured generation. Only about 38% can answer basic foundational financial literacy questions correctly.
That's rough.
Yet, in a fascinating paradox, they exhibit the highest demand for financial education, with a 35% enrollment rate in personal finance courses where available. They desperately want to learn, but there's a massive cognitive blockage.
A study from the Social Security Administration really dives into this. It highlights 3 major psychosocial variables that dictate whether someone can actually absorb financial knowledge: hopelessness, financial satisfaction, and religiosity. Let's start with hopelessness. How does feeling bummed out stop you from learning math?
It goes much deeper than just being bummed out. Psychologists refer to this as learned helplessness. When a young person repeatedly encounters an environment where their efforts seem futile, like working 40 hours a week and still not being able to afford a 1-bedroom apartment, the brain internalizes a state of hopelessness.
So they just give up.
If you genuinely believe the macroeconomic system is rigged, and that retirement is an impossible pipe dream for your generation, you lose all intrinsic motivation to learn the rules of the game. Why would you spend your evenings studying compound interest or the tax code if you believe you will never have enough surplus cash to utilize it? Hopelessness literally drains the cognitive energy required to master complex systems.
It's like asking someone to spend weeks learning the intricate rigging of a sailboat when they are completely convinced the ocean is permanently dried up. Why bother?
That is a perfect analogy. The second variable is financial satisfaction, which operates as a brutal self-reinforcing cycle. On one side of the coin, achieving financial literacy naturally increases your life satisfaction because you know how to build a budget, dodge predatory loans, and manage your cash flow. You feel a sense of control.
But what happens when you are actively dissatisfied, like when you are flat broke?
The sheer stress of financial dissatisfaction creates an immense, crushing cognitive load. When you are operating in a state of financial scarcity, constantly calculating if your debit card will decline at the grocery store, dodging collection calls, worrying about making rent on Friday, your brain's bandwidth is entirely hijacked by immediate survival.
You are in a constant fight-or-flight state.
Yes.
So if I'm totally stressed out about money, my brain's architecture is literally making it harder for me to learn how to fix the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your working memory is reduced. The stress leaves zero mental space to sit down and calmly comprehend abstract long-term concepts like inflation hedges or Roth conversions. You are entirely trapped in the present, though the study does note an interesting caveat.
What's that?
For some individuals, hitting an absolute financial rock bottom creates such acute agony that it acts as a permanent catalyst. The trauma of that stress spurs them to obsessively educate themselves so they never, ever have to feel that vulnerability again.
And what about the third variable? Religiosity. That feels like a curveball to me. Why is the Social Security Administration studying religion in relation to financial literacy?
It is a vital factor because religion shapes worldview and community behavior. The study reveals that religiosity has a dual, highly complex effect on financial readiness.
How so?
On one hand, high religiosity can occasionally correlate with lower empirical financial literacy. If an individual interprets their faith to mean that a higher power will unilaterally provide for their material future, or if they belong to a tight-knit religious culture that expects the family or the congregation to financially support the elderly, they may feel significantly less urgency to independently learn about retirement vehicles. They might be more passive.
That makes sense. The community will catch me, so I don't need to know how a 401k works.
Yeah.
What is the flip side?
The flip side is that religiosity can profoundly increase actual financial stability and savings rates. Many global faith traditions strongly emphasize virtues like thrift, modesty, living below your means, and avoiding the snare of debt. A young person raised in that environment is culturally conditioned to resist the consumerist impulses that trigger present bias. Furthermore, many modern faith communities actively organize financial education programs, like debt reduction seminars, providing a highly trusted communal environment to learn these skills alongside their peers. It provides a structural framework for discipline.
So it can either breed passivity, or it can provide the exact communal reinforcement needed to beat the apps and the algorithms. Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground. We've mapped the math of the temporal multiplier, the behavioral psychology of present bias, the realities of the debt trap, and the social factors that cloud our brains.
We've laid all the groundwork.
It is time to transition from theory to absolute action. If a teenager is listening to this right now on their break at a summer job, or if a parent is listening and wants to alter their kid's trajectory, what is the specific mechanical tool to make this happen? Let's talk about the ultimate financial cheat code: custodial Roth IRAs and teen brokerage accounts.
This is where we operationalize everything we have talked about. A custodial Roth IRA, or a dedicated teen account like Fidelity Youth or Schwab Teen Investor, is the actual vehicle that makes the temporal multiplier accessible to a minor.
Because normally, a teenager can't just go open an account.
Right. Because of legal statutes, a 16-year-old cannot independently open a standard brokerage account. A parent or legal guardian must open a custodial account on their behalf. The adult manages the administrative side, but the assets within the account legally belong entirely to the minor.
But there is a massive catch here. Specifically for the Roth IRA, I can't just take my weekly allowance for emptying the dishwasher and dump it into a Roth IRA, right?
Correct. And this is the most critical IRS regulation to understand. To contribute money into any IRA, the minor must have documented earned income.
Define earned income for us. What counts and what doesn't?
Earned income means money received in exchange for labor. This could be wages from a formal W-2 job, working the cash register at a hardware store, lifeguarding at the community pool, flipping burgers.
What about odd jobs?
It also includes self-employment income, like running a neighborhood lawn mowing business, consistent babysitting, or dog walking. What does not count is passive income. Allowances from parents for basic household chores, cash gifts from grandparents on a birthday, or investment income. It has to be tied to labor.
Assuming the teen has earned income, what is the ceiling? How much are they legally allowed to contribute?
The contribution limit is up to 100% of their total earned income for that year, capping at a maximum of $7,500 for the year 2026. So if a teenager works all summer and earns exactly $2,000, the maximum amount they can put into the Roth IRA is $2,000.
Okay, let's get to the core of why this specific account is so legendary. Why is a Roth IRA considered a cheat code compared to just opening a regular high-yield savings account or a standard brokerage account?
It is entirely about the geometry of the tax code. A Roth IRA is funded with after-tax dollars. When you put money into it, you do not get to claim a tax deduction for that year. Now, if you are a 45-year-old executive in the highest tax bracket, giving up a tax deduction hurts. But let's look at the teenager. A teenager working a summer job earning $3,000 or $4,000 a year is sitting squarely in the 0% federal income tax bracket. Their standard deduction wipes out their tax liability. They are paying zero federal income taxes anyway.
Oh my God. I see where this is going. So they pay zero taxes on the money going into the account.
Precisely. The money goes in completely untaxed. And because it is housed within a Roth structure, that money and all the compound interest it generates over the next 50 years goes completely tax-free.
That is incredible.
When that teenager reaches age 59 and a half and begins withdrawing the money, the original contributions plus the literal millions of dollars generated by the invisible employee, they pay absolutely zero taxes to the federal government. None. It is the only widely accessible mechanism in the American financial system where you can legally earn money tax-free, compound it tax-free, and spend it tax-free.
That is staggering. But I know exactly what a 17-year-old is going to say to that. That sounds great for old people, but I want to buy a car next year. I might need a security deposit for an apartment when I'm 20. I am terrified of locking my money in a vault until I'm 60 years old.
And that fear of illiquidity is exactly why the Roth IRA is so perfectly designed for young adults.
Right.
While its primary purpose is retirement, it possesses an incredible secondary superpower: supreme flexibility.
Really?
Yes. The account owner can withdraw their original contributions at any time, at any age, for any reason, completely penalty-free and tax-free.
Wait, I really want to clarify this. If a 17-year-old contributes $2,000 from their summer job, and a few years later that account has grown to $3,500,
Yeah.
They can just take the $2,000 out if their car transmission blows up.
Yes, they can. They cannot touch the $1,500 of earnings, the compound growth, without facing a penalty until retirement age. But the original $2,000 they put in is always accessible to them.
So it's basically a backup plan.
Because of this rule, a Roth IRA actually functions as a highly effective, stealthy emergency fund for a young adult. Furthermore, the IRS allows specific exceptions even for the earnings. For instance, you can withdraw up to $10,000 of the earnings penalty-free to use toward the purchase of a first-time home.
Oh, wow.
You can also use the earnings to pay for qualified higher education expenses without the 10% early withdrawal penalty, though you would owe standard income tax on those earnings in that specific education scenario.
Okay, but what about the FAFSA? If a kid is applying to college and trying to get federal financial aid or a Pell Grant, doesn't having an investment account with thousands of dollars in it ruin their chances? Won't the government just expect them to use that money to pay for tuition?
That is another massive strategic benefit of the Roth wrapper. Under current AFSA regulations, the balances of qualified retirement accounts, including Roth IRAs, are entirely shielded.
Shielded?
They are not factored into the federal financial aid formula as accessible assets. The wealth is invisible to the AFSA calculation.
Wait, so a kid could have 10 grand in a Roth IRA, and the financial aid office doesn't count it against them?
Correct. The only time a Roth IRA impacts financial aid is if you actually execute a withdrawal from the account during what is called the base year, the specific tax year the HYSA is looking at, which is usually the prior year before enrollment. If you pull money out, it counts as income for that year and will impact aid. But simply holding the accumulating wealth inside the account protects it.
This is incredibly powerful. But we have to be realistic about human nature. Telling a 16-year-old who just spent 40 hours a week flipping burgers in July to take their entire paycheck and lock it in an index fund is a nearly impossible pitch.
It is a very hard sell.
They want to buy a video game console. They want to go out with their friends. What is the actual actionable strategy to get a teenager to do this without feeling completely deprived?
This is where the parents or grandparents step in. The sources suggest a highly effective behavioral strategy called the parental match.
I love the sound of that. How does it work?
Here is the exact script a parent can use. You go to your teenager and say, I want you to experience the reward of your hard work. Keep the $1,000 you made lifeguarding. Put it in your checking account. Use it for gas. Use it for fun. But because you officially earned $1,000 of documented income, you now legally qualify for a Roth IRA. So I am going to gift you $1,000 of my money, and we are going to deposit my gifted money directly into your Roth IRA.
That is brilliant. The IRS doesn't care whose bank account the physical dollars originated from, as long as the total contribution to the IRA does not exceed the teenager's documented earned income for the year.
Exactly. The teenager gets the immediate gratification and autonomy of spending their paycheck, which prevents resentment. Meanwhile, the parent is effectively gifting them a massive, multi-decade head start on financial independence by funding the IRA. It is a win-win.
And what if they don't have a W-2?
If the teenager is earning their income through cash gigs like consistent babysitting or running a lawn care route, it is imperative that the family keeps records. You don't need a formal accounting system. Just keep a simple notebook or a digital spreadsheet, log the date, the name of the client, the service provided, and the exact amount paid. That simple log is all you need to validate the earned income if the IRS ever inquires.
Let's talk about the transition of power. What happens when the teenager grows up? Does the parent just maintain control of this account forever, dangling it over the kid's head?
No. By legal definition, the custodial status has an expiration date. At the age of majority, which varies by state but is typically 18 or 21, the custodial arrangement automatically terminates. The account transfers entirely, legally, and fully to the young adult. The parent is completely removed from the account access.
Oh, wow. So an 18-year-old suddenly gets total control over an account that could have thousands of dollars in it.
Which is exactly why you cannot just secretly open this account and surprise them with it on their 18th birthday. If you hand an 18-year-old a brokerage account with $10,000 in it and they have no financial context, they are going to liquidate it, pay the penalties, and buy a used sports car.
They absolutely will.
The parental match strategy is useless if it isn't paired with education. You have to involve them in the process, show them the compound interest calculators, teach them about the plateau of latent potential, explain to them that they are managing an invisible employee. You want them to deeply understand the mechanics of the wealth so that when they take the reins at 18, they view the account as a sacred asset, not a slush fund.
Happy 18th birthday. Here is a financial engine that could literally buy your freedom in 30 years. Please do not cash it out for a depreciating asset. This is the ultimate goal. We have covered a truly staggering amount of ground today. We've gone from the macroeconomics of a teenager's worldview to the literal IRS tax code.
It is a vast ecosystem, but if we synthesize the core themes of this deep dive, it distills down to a few undeniable truths. First, time is your greatest, most irreplaceable financial asset. Compound interest is a mathematical force of nature, but it requires fuel and a long runway to achieve liftoff.
So true.
Second, you cannot out-willpower your own neurobiology. You have to beat your brain's evolutionary present bias by aggressively automating your savings, removing the daily friction of choice.
Automate everything.
Third, you must navigate the debt landscape objectively, understanding the 6% rule and the true opportunity cost of your dollars. And finally, you have to utilize the structural tools available to you, like the custodial Roth IRA, to lock in decades of tax-free growth while you are in the lowest tax bracket of your life.
I love how you tied that all together. It is about building a system that protects you from yourself. And to wrap this up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought. Whether you are driving to school, walking across a college campus, or commuting to a job you want to eventually leave, I want you to visualize something.
I want you to truly visualize that invisible employee we talked about earlier. This employee is relentless. They work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They never ask for a raise, they never call in sick, and the output they produce doubles every few years like clockwork.
The dream employee.
The only question you have to answer is this. Are you going to hire this employee today when their starting salary is just a few dollars a month? Or are you going to wait 10 years when hiring that exact same employee is going to cost you 10 times as much of your own sweat and labor?
That is the perfect question to end on. You are hiring an invisible employee today to buy your freedom tomorrow. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We know how valuable your time is, and we genuinely hope this deep dive gave you the clarity to look at your money differently. I want to challenge you right now. Reflect on just one key takeaway from today. Maybe it's setting up that automatic transfer so you don't have to think about it anymore. Maybe it's looking into the ROI of a specific trade certification instead of defaulting to a massive student loan. Or maybe it's sitting down with your parents tonight and pitching them the parental match for your summer job. Pick one thing and apply it to your life this week. Your future self is waiting, and I promise you, they will thank you for the choices you make today. Have a great one.